Cloudcast Media.
Drew Schlosberg Spotlight on the Community Show, amplifying the voices of social impact organizations, entrepreneurs, local nonprofits, and other community champions who shape the culture, creativity, and connectivity of San Diego. Brought to you by Mission Fed Credit Union, bringing good things to San Diego for over 60 years. Learn more about what is good for you and good for all by visiting www.missionfed.com.
I'm Drew Schlosberg, and it is always good to have a longtime friend and colleague in the studio with us, and that is Doug Wright. He is the Chief Financial Officer for Mission Fed Credit Union, and full disclosure, Doug and I also serve on the San Diego Council on Literacy. He's on the board. I'm on the advisory board after many years. Doug, always good to see you.
Yeah, great to see you too, Drew.
Life is treating you well?
My life is treating me really well right now.
Very, very good. How long have you been at Mission Fed?
I've been here about 7 years now.
7 years. Okay. Mm-hmm. Great organization. And I've been fortunate enough to have been working with them for, it seems like, forever on all these unbelievable community impacts that Mission Fed has had throughout the years and continues to have in different areas of making people's lives a lot better. And it's always an honor to chat with somebody who works for Mission Fed on this. Well, let's get right to it. As the CFO, what is the general market update?
Oh, boy, that's a challenging question.
We got 3 hours, so...
Yeah, it's a really interesting time in the market right now. You have a lot of uncertainty again moving into 2023. If you take a look at kind of the general economic environment, certainly we're slowing from an economic growth perspective. The economy is slowing down. There's diversity in opinion among experts and market analysts as to whether we're actually going to go into a recession this year or whether we're just going to slow down to somewhat near recession levels. But either way, certainly we're not going to see the really strong economic growth that we've seen the last couple of years. It's definitely slowing down. So that's, kind of what's factoring or what's on a lot of people's minds at this point in time.
Yeah, and of course, we had President Biden was up talking about some growth, I think, over the last couple months, if I'm not mistaken, 2.9% or whatever the case may be. That's certainly not a bad thing, I imagine.
Yeah.
And inflation is, been going down, maybe not as quickly as we'd like, but it has not been going up. That doesn't mean it's not going to go up. So was that not a positive report on the economy?
Yeah, in general, the fourth quarter economic growth was around 2.9%.
Right.
That's a preliminary figure, but that's relatively strong, and it came off about a 3.5% growth in the third quarter. So those two reports were relatively strong. What we saw, though, was that a lot of that growth was built in the early fourth quarter.
Okay.
And the economy definitely tailed down towards the end of the year. And certainly as we enter the first quarter this year and we look at preliminary January numbers and conditions in January, there's definite slowing. So good report overall for fourth quarter.
Right.
But definite slowing in the later part.
Right. Now, does it normally slow at the end of the year and into the first of the year, or it just really depends on the year?
It really depends on the year, although latter fourth quarter tends to be relatively strong in a lot of cases because it involves the holiday season. And so there's typically a lot of consumer spending. As we all know, the consumers really drive the U.S. economy.
They do.
So typically end of fourth quarter is relatively strong as consumers are spending for the holiday. And that, the holiday numbers were weaker this year. Part of that is, I think, people spent earlier. The big stores rolled out discounts earlier, so people spent earlier. But partly it was because I think people are just generally more cautious about what things look like in 2023.
How are we doing with consumer confidence? It's still shaky?
Still pretty shaky. It's definitely not at the high levels it was earlier in 2022 or particularly in 2021 as people were coming off the pandemic. They had stimulus savings to spend and so on. So they were pretty strong in terms of a confidence level earlier on, but it's definitely weaker now.
Right. We're chatting with Doug Wright. He's the Chief Financial Officer for Mission Fed Credit Union. I'm Drew Schlosberg, and you're listening to Drew Schlosberg Spotlight on the Community Show on Cloudcast Media, brought to you by Mission Fed Credit Union. We are at the beautiful Mission Fed studios here in Scripps Ranch. Mission Fed has been doing great things for San Diegans for more than 60 years. So, one of the things I always look at, my former industry, I guess I'm always going to be attached to the Union Tribune for forever in that area, or I just ought to say media in general. Just reading the reports, and there was something on, I forget which station it was, that home prices to plummet and so forth, and of course plummet depends on how you look at plummet and all that. Always reminds me, and I'm not sure if you and I have chatted about this before, my financial advisor always reminds me of this. People look at the negative. They forget the fact that, well, yeah, houses have gone down, but take a look where they were 4 years ago. You're still up 400,000 or whatever the case may be. Talk about that a little bit, just the psyche of the consumer, and maybe even the home buyer or home seller.
Yeah, certainly. It's an interesting market right now from a home buying perspective. If you're a homeowner at this point in time, it's a pretty good time. Most homeowners have seen, as you said, pretty substantial increases in value over the last 4 years.
Right.
And even with some downward pressure on prices, it hasn't gotten near to the level of where prices have gone up over the last 4 years. So people are sitting on a fair amount of equity in their homes right now, and many people refinanced over the last couple of years.
That's right.
And got into a 2.25%, 2.5% mortgage. And boy, that's just a really nice mortgage rate, and has allowed their payments to go down fairly dramatically, and give them some extra spending power or savings power as they look forward. So if you already own a home, it's a pretty nice time to be in the San Diego market. If you're looking to buy a home, unfortunately, it's not such a nice time. Even though we've seen prices come down a little bit, they're still pretty high. It's still, affordability and home prices are still a struggle for home buyers in the market. And when you compound that with about a 4% increase in interest rates over this last year, it's really tough to get into a new home right now. So if you're a home buyer, it probably is a good idea to be patient and wait for either home prices to come down further or mortgage rates to come down, or a combination of both. Right.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, we're seeing mortgage rates come down a little bit, or I think they're down under 7 or something to that effect. They're not the 2.25, but they're also not the 19% that we had many years ago. If you're old enough that you would know what we're talking about in that area. And what I always look at, and I know I was talking to one of your colleagues at Mission Fed in charge of the real estate, it's really all relative. Who wants to buy, where they want to buy, where they're coming from. We know Apple is bringing down, 4,000 people from the Bay Area. I'm not mistaken. I guess some of them are already coming here and are already here. Hopefully, that bodes well for those people who want to sell their home if the Apple folks have a lot of money. But talk a little bit about that and the interest rates. Where do you see that going? And that certainly we know the Fed's been bringing every few seconds, it seems like they go up a quarter point, and they're planning on doing it again, I think, right?
Yeah, absolutely. If you take a look at where the Fed is going and what the Fed has signaled, virtually almost unanimously among all the Fed speakers, they say we're not done with interest rate increases. In fact, they've got a meeting next week. It's very likely they'll announce an interest rate increase. The market is betting it's going to be another 25 basis point increase. And the Fed is telling us that's probably one of 3 or 4 more. If you look at where the Fed speakers are targeting, it's probably a little bit in the Fed funds target rate, probably a little bit above 5%, which is about a 1% increase from where we're at now. If you, on the other hand, look at the bond market is saying the Fed isn't going to make it. They're not going to be able to generate those kinds of increases without really damaging the economy. So they're saying the Fed's going to stop sooner and start decreasing rates further sooner. So it's really kind of who you want to believe at this point in time. Do you want to believe the Fed and what they're telling us, or do you want to believe what the bond market is telling us? And that's generating a lot of uncertainty. Now, when you talk about mortgage rates in particular, mortgage rates peaked at about, if you're talking about the conforming 30-year fixed rate mortgage, which is where most people want to be at, it peaked at about 7% earlier in 2022. It has come down. it's around 6.25% to 6.5%, depending on the day and what's happening in the market. So it's a little bit better, and it's not certainly the 2% you mentioned, but it's a little bit better. And thinking back to 2005 even, or 2004, a 6% mortgage was not all that bad. So as you said, it's really relative, and it takes time for the market to adjust to those kinds of rates. So we're all in shock right now.
Right.
But a 6% mortgage is not by any means unusual from a historical perspective.
Right. Again, we're chatting with Doug Wright. He is the Chief Financial Officer for Mission Fed Credit Union. I'm Drew Schlosberg of Cloudcast Media, chatting about the economic state. Is San Diego in any better shape, worse shape, the same shape of cities of its size around the country?
I think honestly, San Diego's in a little bit better shape.
Yeah.
San Diego has done a really nice job, both from a plan development perspective, but also some fortuitous things coming our way in diversifying its economy over the last 10 or 15 years. So we have a relatively diverse economic base, and as a result, that makes us a little bit more resistant to the uncertainties and the changing tides of the economy. So when you talk about, the biotech industry and the technology industry, they're going through a little bit of a pause right now, but we still have strong military. We have tourism rebounding. We have that really strong cross-border traffic and that international presence with Mexico right next to us, and that's rebounding. So in general, San Diego's performed better over the last year than the national economy. Our unemployment rate is below the national unemployment rate, certainly below California's unemployment rate. Right. And as you said, prices are relative too. So affordability, I'm not going to say, is not a problem in San Diego. Affordability is a problem in San Diego.
Correct.
But when you compare it to other areas of the state of California, particularly up and down the coast, we're a little bit more affordable than some of the other areas. So we do see, the Apple employees coming down and so on. So that helps a little bit in comparison to other California coastal economies.
Right. And of course, wage has a lot to do with it. We've talked a lot about, what are the wages in San Diego compared to LA or San Francisco or some of the other cities. I don't know if we've caught up with them. My sense is we have not, based on what you can get out of it. That has something to do with it as well. One quick question before we go to break, Doug. How has this impacted financial institutions like Mission Fed or others in this area?
Yeah, it's been a really interesting cycle over the last couple of years. What you've seen is early, right as the pandemic started, and for the first year and a half or 2 years through the pandemic, we saw a big rush of deposits come into the credit union, as did most other financial institutions. People had excess money. They were putting that money into savings, and they were generating more and more deposits for us. And so we had more deposits that we could effectively use.
Right.
That reversed itself in 2022 because I think a lot of people saw the increase in rates coming. And so they rushed to lock in on home loans and car loans and those types of things at relatively low rates. So last year was a year of really strong loan demand. So our loan balances grew and deposits kind of leveled off. And so you find a situation now where loan demand and loan balances are still growing at a relatively rapid pace, but we're not keeping up with from a deposit perspective. So overall liquidity in the credit union and the banking industry is tightening, and that's causing, if you're a depositor, that's causing a very nice situation where banks and credit unions are raising deposit rates at a fairly rapid clip.
They are.
So those of you who have been waiting for 15 years to see rates on your deposits be something more than 0 to 1%. Now is the time you're seeing those. Right,
and there are some great rates out there, CDs and so forth in that aspect of it. Doug, when we come back from break, you always do a great job of giving some advice. Okay, listen, based on the uncertainty in the economy, budget wisely, save wisely. Here's how you do it wisely, and maybe we can give some of that advice when we come back from break. How do you think?
Sure.
Very good. We'll be right back with Doug Wright, Chief Financial Officer for Mission Fed Credit Union. I'm Drew Schlosberg, and you've been listening to Drew Schlosberg Spotlight on the Community Show on Cloudcast Media, brought to you by Mission Fed Credit Union. They've been doing great things in San Diego for more than 60 years. We will be right back.
When you do your banking with Mission Fed, you get great rates on auto and home loans. That's good for you, but something good also happens for a lot of other people. We're not for profit, so we put money back into the community to help lots of great nonprofits to keep San Diego strong. So you're not just getting something good, you're doing something good. Come to Mission Fed. It's banking that's good for all.
Brand amplification is the DNA of Cloudcast Media, and our code is the powerful blending of sound, voice, and storytelling to lift local brands and their communities. Whether it is our Brandcast, Schoolcast, or Causecast platforms, the unifying ethos is all about this community, the one you call home. If you dare to dream and want to explore the brand amplification of Cloudcast, a national leader in local podcasting and other Winfluence strategies, please visit us at cloudcast.us.
I'm Drew Schlosberg, and you're listening to Drew Schlosberg Spotlight on the Community, show on Cloudcast Media, brought to you by Mission Fed Credit Union, and here in these wonderful studio and Mission Fed and Scripps Ranch. Mission Fed has been doing just wonderful things for San Diegans for more than 60 years. We are chatting with Chief Financial Officer of Mission Fed, Doug Wright. Gave us a great overview of where we are in the economy, especially as it applies to San Diego. And now that we know, we better hit the, let's be thinking before we start spending a lot of money mode. How do we do this? How do you budget wisely? What does budgeting wisely look like?
Okay. Well, unfortunately, last year was a real tough year in terms of inflation. We all saw price increases pretty dramatically up, and that's going to slow down this year. The price increases are most likely going to slow down. In fact, they were already slowing down in the fourth quarter. January's preliminary numbers show that price increases are slowing. But slowing price increases does not mean price decreases. So if you haven't adjusted your budget already to gas prices around $4.50, to natural gas prices up substantially,
right,
to food prices up 10 or 15 or 20% more than they were a couple of years ago, better adjust those, because although we're seeing a slowing in the increase, we're not seeing a decrease at this point in time.
Right. How much should people be saving? I mean, obviously it depends on what the paycheck is, what their expenses are. You and I have talked about there's wants and needs and so forth, and you better be understanding what the difference is between the two in this area. But is there a general rule that no matter what you're making, unless you're barely making it, you should save X amount?
Yeah, ideally, we try to break savings into really three different buckets.
Right.
The first bucket is an emergency savings, and you should ideally have 6 to 12 months worth of expenses, of your monthly expenses. If you've set a budget, figured out your monthly expenses, right, you should have 6 to 12 months saved. And that will help you when that engine blows or the refrigerator goes out or whatever the case may be. Because ideally, you want to use savings to be able to pay those types of things so that you don't have to go into debt and pay interest on that debt in order to cover those. So that's the first bucket. The second bucket is really probably around retirement savings. Unfortunately, we don't think Social Security is probably going to be able to fulfill all the needs that people have in retirement. So you really want to have some savings set aside if you can do it for retirement, regardless of what age you are. And then the third bucket is for those other, kind of needs and wants you have. And that could be saving for a down payment, that could be saving for a new car, that could be saving for kids' education or so on. So if you want to break your savings into three different categories, I'd say that. If you look at overall savings, ideally, once probably your priority is that emergency savings, because that's going to give you some buffer when those emergencies do happen. But once you've fulfilled that, then ideally you want to save between 10 and 15% of your income for retirement. And so set aside as much as you can and try to, if you can't do that right away, try to start smaller. And then automatically, as you get, wage increases or whatever, automatically increase on a year-to-year basis so that ultimately, hopefully, you're at 10 to 15% of that. And then the next bucket of savings, anything else that you can do, whether it's a tax return or a gift or whatever the case may be, anything else that you can do would probably go into that third bucket, which would cover those other things, new cars, down payments, those types of things.
Right. And, and you encourage people, no matter what they bring in, try to save something, okay? Mm-hmm. Even if it's only, it sounds odd, even if it's only $25 a month, okay?
Absolutely.
Save something. And I think I didn't get into the habit of saving. And, I know I've chatted with some other folks that have been in your position, different entities, and I guess the answer is the woeful nature of how much Americans as a whole save, correct?
That is correct. If you take a look at this point in time, and let's focus on that emergency savings bucket at this point in time, the most recent surveys that I've read have indicated that only about 40%, 30 to 40% of Americans can even cover a $500 or $600 emergency without going into debt at this point in time. So it's really critical to get that savings habit going. And just like any habit, whether you're starting to exercise or doing whatever, even a small step will help you build those habits. And once you start with that $25, then it's easy to say, well, I could raise that to $30 or $35 a month or $50 a month. It's a lot easier once you've started doing that, and particularly if you can use automated savings where it automatically comes out of either your paycheck or your account, then you don't miss it as much, and it helps you get into that habit.
Right, and let's be clear. We know that with some people, they do the best they can, and there's just no savings left. Okay, understand that, and certainly got to be sensitive to that aspect as well. But listen, there are people that need some advice on this. Talk a little bit about what Mission Fed does. Do you guys have seminars? Do you have workshops? Do you have different programs for people? And do you have to be a Mission Fed member to get that benefit?
Yeah, number one, I would tell you, no, you absolutely do not need to be a Mission Fed member. Mission Fed's whole mission in the community is to improve wellness and particularly financial wellness throughout our community. And so we're here to serve all San Diegans. And so absolutely take advantage of whatever resources we have, whether you're a member or a non-member. Having said that, we have a variety of different resources. We do a number of webinars and a number of live types of seminars on financial wellness, on budgeting topics, savings, managing credit effectively, those types of things. We also do have a lot of different resources on the web for people at missionfed.com for people to take advantage of. And there are small snippets. They're focused on really specific aspects of budgeting or savings or credit management or those types of things. So they're really pretty easy to digest. And if you need more help, certainly come into one of our branches or call our contact center, and they can get you in touch with a financial wellness expert who's willing to sit down with you either by phone or by Zoom or in person and really walk through kind of the basics of financial management. So a variety of tools. Really encourage anyone who's in San Diego to take advantage of those tools.
No, that's great advice. And again, the website is missionfed.com, and plenty of information on that for those types of resources. I'm Drew Schlosberg, and you're listening to Drew Schlosberg Spotlight on the Community Show on Cloudcast Media, brought to you by Mission Fed Credit Union. Been doing wonderful things in San Diego for more than 60 years. We're chatting with Doug Wright, Chief Financial Officer for Mission Fed Credit Union. I think one of the things that is so cool what your organization does and has done for many, many years, even during difficult times, you don't stop giving back to the community.
No.
And, some companies we know pull back, a lot. And you guys are always there doing stuff. And whether it's been contributing, resources to organizations to keep their lights going on or to grow them or to volunteer, really hats off. It's in the DNA of Mission Fed Credit Union, is it not?
Yeah, absolutely. One of our core values really is we try to step up when the community is suffering.
Right.
We think that's the most important time for Mission Fed and a credit union in general to be able to step up, because more people and more of our members as well as non-members in San Diego are hurting at that point in time. So that's a wonderful opportunity for us to step up and do more in those types of situations. So although we don't look forward to those times of economic uncertainty, it's a time that we really feel like we can help the community even more, and we try to step up to do that.
Right. So is there any light to this tunnel where, you know what, we see a little bit of a glimmer in 2023, or not, 2023 is going to be another tough year, not sure if it'll be a recession or not, but we see some hope coming up in 2024, or maybe even the end of 2023, or who knows? Yeah,
absolutely. I think regardless of, kind of whatever market observer you're looking at, most individuals and most of the market is anticipating that any kind of recession is going to be a mild one in 2023, and that things will pick back up in 2024. So yeah, I would say that the inflation trends are good at this point in time. Hopefully will continue to be good. So price increases will start to moderate, and in some cases maybe go down. Certain sectors of the goods economy you're seeing reductions in prices at this point in time. So if we can kind of wait it out and work through this year, I think things will be a little bit better in 24. The other thing I would highlight too that is a positive, and we go back to those situations where you're really struggling to make that budget. It's honestly a very good time to be able to focus on the income side. Unemployment and labor force participation is relatively low, which means there are opportunities for income out there, whether you're looking for a new job or a primary job, those opportunities are out there. Or if you're looking for a side hustle or a second job or those types of things, the labor market is pretty strong and wages are going up. So there's hope for people who can take a look and say, can I do something else? Can I earn a little bit more, whether it's in my primary job or whether I'm doing a side hustle or whatever the case may be. So that's a positive. The other thing that's positive, which we talked a little bit about earlier, is that deposit rates are coming back up. So, you can get 4% at Mission Fed on a CD right now. The last time we offered 4% on a CD was probably in the mid-2000s. Yeah. So you can earn a little bit more on your money at this point in time. So that's a positive as well.
And be saving while you're doing that.
Absolutely.
As well. Well, that's so great to end on a positive note. And Doug, you always give some great feedback on this, and we're so grateful to have you on our Spotlight in the Community show. And probably to your detriment, you do such a great job. We'd love to have you back as much as you'd like to be coming in and giving these updates, which I think is really important to our listeners and so forth. Any final comments?
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for the opportunity. It's something we love to do, is be able to help in any way that we can. So certainly happy to come back, certainly happy to give an update and, make it through 23 and hopefully green shoots and better times ahead in 2024.
Well, thank you so much. You've been chatting with Doug Wright. He's the Chief Financial Officer for Mission Fed Credit Union. I'm Drew Schlosberg, and you've been listening to another edition of Drew Schlosberg Spotlight on the Community show on Cloudcast Media, brought to you by Mission Fed Credit Union, doing spectacular things for San Diego's for more than 60 years.
You've been listening to an episode of Drew Schlosberg's Spotlight on the Community show, amplifying the voices of social impact organizations, entrepreneurs, local nonprofits, and other community champions who shape the culture, creativity, and connectivity of San Diego community. Brought to you by Mission Fed Credit Union, bringing good things to San Diego for over 60 years. Learn more about what is good for you and good for all by visiting www.missionfed.com.
Cloudcast Media.